Have you ever been inside an airport late at night? When the crowds disappear, the lights dim, and the endless hallways echo with every single step. Something feels wrong. Most people think of airports as places of excitement, reunions, and departures. But what if I told you there are darker stories hidden behind those glass walls and security gates? Stories that airlines will never officially admit. Stories that some staff refuse to even speak about tonight. You're about to hear three terrifying true stories from inside airports. Encounters with passengers who never should have been there. Flights that should never have existed, and secrets buried deep beneath the runways. These are not just creepy legends. They are chilling accounts told by pilots, staff, and even travelers who swear they saw things no human should ever see. Yes, oh, buckle your seatbelt. Because once you step into these stories, there's no turning back. Welcome to the dark side of the airport. Story 1. The flight that never landed. Airports are strange places at night. During the day, they're alive with movement. Hundreds of flights, thousands of people, endless announcements echoing over the loudspeakers. But once the last passengers leave and the terminal falls into silence, the whole atmosphere shifts. For those who have worked the night shift, they know, sometimes, it feels like the building itself is breathing. This story comes from one such shift. It was the spring of 1996 at a medium-sized European airport. The weather had been bad all day. Rainstorms, heavy wind, and fog so dense it looked like a wall of smoke pressing against the glass. Many flights had been delayed, and a few were outright canceled. By midnight, only a skeleton crew remained. A few tower operators, ground staff, and security guards making their rounds. Up in the control tower, radar screens flickered in the dim light. One of the operators, a veteran named Henrik, leaned back in his chair, exhausted. The night was quiet, too quiet. That was when one of the junior operators spoke up. "Sir, do you see that?" A small blip had appeared on the radar screen. At first, Henrik thought it was just interference. That happened sometimes when the weather was bad. But then the radio crackled to life. "Tower, this is Flight 452 requesting immediate clearance to land. Fuel is critical. I repeat, we are requesting permission to land." The voice was calm, professional, and wrong. It sounded tinny, distorted, as if coming from an old radio instead of the modern comm system. Henrik immediately checked the flight schedule. There was no Flight 452 listed. He searched again, cross-checking every airline. Still nothing. "Tower to Flight 452. Please confirm your airline and point of origin," Henrik said. There was silence for several seconds. Then the voice came back. "We are low on fuel. Please clear runway for emergency landing. Do you copy?" Against protocol, Henrik gave clearance. The weather was too severe to take chances. He and the ground crew braced themselves as they peered through the fog, waiting for any sign of lights in the sky. Minutes later, they saw it. Glowing landing lights breaking through the mist. The plane descended smoothly, engines roaring, and touched down with near-perfect precision. It slowed, taxied down the runway, and then stopped. The emergency crews rushed forward. But when they approached the plane, they froze. The aircraft was unlike anything they had seen in years. Its fuselage bore the logo of an airline that no longer existed. The paint was peeling, the metal dull with age. It was a Douglas DC-4 a model retired decades ago. Is this some kind of joke? One of the ground staff muttered, staring up at the plane. The crew opened the cabin doors. Inside was pure silence. No flight attendants, no passengers, no pilots. Every seat was empty. The cockpit showed old, dust-covered instruments, many of them broken. Yet somehow, the plane had landed itself. Panic spread through the staff. Security cameras were pulled for review, but when the footage was played back, there was nothing on the runway, just fog. The camera showed workers rushing around, lights flashing, but no plane. Still, the jet had been there. People touched it. They swore they heard the engines fade into silence. But within an hour, when they went back to inspect it again, the aircraft was gone. Airport officials dismissed the entire event as radar interference and human error. The workers who spoke out were silenced, threatened with job loss if they continued to talk. But whispers spread among the night staff. Years later, Henrik decided to do some digging. He found records of Flight 452, a transatlantic flight from New York to Paris in 1954. The plane, a DC-4, had disappeared over the ocean with 57 passengers and crew. No wreckage was ever found. No distress calls were ever recorded. To this day, workers on night shifts at that same airport claim that, on foggy nights, their radios sometimes crackle with an old, tired voice. "Tower, this is Flight 452, requesting permission to land." And they say, if you look closely down the runway, you might see faint landing lights glowing in the mist before vanishing again, leaving nothing but silence. Story 2. The pilot in the empty terminal asterisk airports are designed for movement. The constant stream of travelers, the rhythm of rolling suitcases, the endless calls of departure gates. Everything in them screams life. But when the crowds vanish, when the last evening flight departs and silence swallows the terminal, the building becomes something entirely different. This story begins with a man named Daniel, who had worked as a security officer at an international airport for almost 15 years. He knew every corner of the terminal, the echoing hallways, the baggage claim area, the endless gates that stretched like arteries. Night shifts were usually uneventful, but Daniel admitted he always hated them. An empty airport doesn't feel empty, he once told a colleague. It feels like it's waiting. One particular night, Daniel was assigned to patrol Terminal C, a section that had been mostly shut down due to renovations. Most of the shops were closed, lights dimmed, and even the escalators had been turned off to save electricity. He walked slowly, his flashlight beams sweeping across the polished floors. That's when he noticed something odd. Sitting at gate 17 was a man in uniform. At first glance, Daniel assumed he was a pilot. He wore the classic dark jacket, the stripes on his shoulders, the cap resting neatly on his head. But there was something wrong. The terminal was locked. No flights were scheduled. No one, especially not a pilot, was supposed to be there. Daniel approached cautiously. "Excuse me, sir. The terminal is closed. Can I help you?" The man didn't move. He sat perfectly still, hands folded on his lap, staring straight ahead at the darkened boarding bridge. "Sir?" Daniel repeated, a little firmer. Slowly, the man turned his head. His face was pale, unnaturally so, almost gray under the fluorescent light. His eyes looked tired, sunken, and yet he managed a faint smile. "I'm just waiting for my flight." Daniel froze. The words sent a chill down his spine. "Sir, there are no flights scheduled from this terminal. Can I see your ID?" The man didn't answer. He simply looked back toward the jet bridge as if he expected something, or someone, to arrive. Against his better judgment, Daniel stepped closer. He noticed the pilot's uniform looked dated. The fabric was worn. The airline insignia stitched on the breast pocket belonged to a company Daniel didn't recognize. He would later find out that airline had gone bankrupt nearly 40 years earlier. Then Daniel's radio crackled. It was dispatch, checking in on his patrol. He reached for the radio, glanced back, and the pilot was gone. The chair where he had been sitting was empty. No footsteps, no sound, just silence. Daniel felt his skin crawl. He searched the area, even unlocked the nearby jet bridge, convinced the man had slipped away. But there was nothing. The bridge was sealed, dust covering the walkway. No footprints. Shaken, Daniel filed a report. His supervisors dismissed it. "Probably a trespasser," they said. "Or maybe you just saw a reflection." But over the following weeks, more reports came in. Cleaning crews refused to work in Terminal C after midnight. Some swore they saw a lone figure sitting by Gate 17, always in the same uniform, always waiting. Others claimed to hear footsteps echoing down the empty concourse, only to find nothing there. One janitor even described walking past the pilot late at night. He looked up, smiled politely, and said, "They delayed my flight again." When the janitor turned to look back, he was gone. Eventually, rumors spread that this was the spirit of a pilot whose final flight never took off. Digging into old records revealed that, in 1973, a captain for the now-defunct airline had suffered a fatal heart attack inside that very terminal. He had been scheduled to fly out from Gate 17 that night, but never made it. Workers believe he never left .to this day. Night staff whisper about the pilot. Some claim that if you walk through Terminal C around 3 a.m., you'll see him sitting silently in the dark, staring at the locked jet bridge, waiting for a flight that will never board. And if he turns to smile at you, don't answer, because those who did, they later reported hearing faint boarding calls echoing in their homes, long after leaving the airport. Story 3. The restricted zone beneath the airport. Most passengers never think about what lies beneath an airport. They see the terminals, the gates, the flashing monitors. But below the polished floors is an entire hidden world. Maintenance tunnels, luggage systems, staff-only corridors, and sealed-off rooms that haven't been opened in decades. This final story comes from a man named Carlos, a baggage handler who worked night shifts at a massive international hub. He often joked that he knew more about the underworld of the airport than the runways above. But one experience in those tunnels made him quit his job and never set foot near an airport again. It began when Carlos was asked to check a power outage in a restricted maintenance corridor below Terminal B. The lights in that section had been failing for weeks, and electrical engineers kept complaining that the wiring didn't match any official schematics. Management blamed old construction, but Carlos suspected there was more to it. Armed with a flashlight, he descended through a service hatch and stepped into a long, narrow tunnel lined with pipes. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of rust and stagnant water. The deeper he went, the more uneasy he felt. His radio lost signal within minutes. After nearly 20 minutes of walking, Carlos noticed something strange. The concrete walls looked older than the rest of the facility, cracked and discolored. At one point, he passed a faded warning sign in a language he didn't recognize, something that looked Eastern European. But this airport had been built only 30 years ago. The sign shouldn't have been there. Then he reached a heavy metal door. It was unmarked, sealed with a chain that looked decades old. Against his better judgment, Carlos pushed on it. To his surprise, the chain snapped easily, brittle with age. The door groaned open, releasing a gust of cold, stale air, but on the other side was a massive underground chamber. Rows of chairs lined the walls, like an abandoned waiting area. Old flight posters hung in tatters, their colors faded. Dust covered everything. But what struck Carlos most was the silence. It wasn't just quiet, it was oppressive, like the air itself was holding its breath. And then he heard it. Footsteps. They echoed from the far end of the chamber. Slow, deliberate, and heavy, as if someone was dragging their feet. Carlos swung his flashlight, the beam cutting through the dark. That's when he saw them. Figures. Dozens of them, sitting silently in the chairs. Their clothes were outdated, suits, dresses, coats that looked decades old. Their faces were pale, blank, almost wax-like. None of them moved. None of them blinked. That Carlos's heart pounded. He tried to back away, but then one of the figures, a tall man in a trench coat, slowly turned his head. His eyes met Carlos's, black and hollow, and his mouth opened in a slow, impossible grin. The others began to stir, shifting in their seats, their heads turning toward him all at once. A low whisper filled the chamber, words he couldn't understand, spoken in dozens of voices at once. Terrified, Carlos bolted. He ran back through the tunnel, his flashlight flickering. Behind him, he swore he heard footsteps chasing him, growing louder and faster. But when he finally slammed the hatch shut and climbed back into the staff corridor, everything went silent again. That he reported what he found, but supervisors dismissed it. Old construction. You imagined it, they told him. But when he insisted on showing them the chamber, the tunnel had changed. The metal door was gone. In its place was solid concrete. No trace of what he had seen. Carlos quit his job the next day. Rumors spread among the staff that beneath the airport lies an older structure, built over ruins that were never properly documented. Some believe it was once a military bunker, others a forgotten terminal from a previous era. But those who work the night shift whisper something different, that it is a terminal for flights that never left, and sometimes, late at night, if you walk through the baggage tunnels, you can hear faint announcements echoing in the dark, boarding calls for flights that don't exist anymore, spoken in dead languages, summoning passengers who never made it home. Asterisk, and that was it. 3 terrifying stories from inside airports. Next time you're walking through a terminal late at night or waiting for a red-eye flight, just remember, not every passenger you see is alive. Not every flight on the schedule should exist. And sometimes, the places beneath the airport hide secrets that were never meant to be found. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these stories scared you the most? Have you ever had a strange experience while traveling? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them all. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. so you don't miss the next deep dive into the world of myths, legends, and true scary stories. Because sometimes the most ordinary places hide the darkest secrets.